from our next guest. Joining me now, the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. Congressman, what's the first question you want answered by Admiral Bradley?
Well, there's a series of questions, but number one, who did order the strike? Who was operationally in charge of this? Because it seems to be being said by the White House now that it was Admiral Bradley. Is that the case? Secretary Hegseth has previously said that he was personally involved in many of these strikes, that he was monitoring them. So who specifically gave the order? But it goes much broader than that. What were the rules of engagement for this? And this is what the Washington Post story had said, was that Secretary Hegseth basically said the rules of engagement was kill them all. If that's the case, then that's something we want to find out. What were his rules of engagement, and then what exactly was the chain of command? Because also in this is the Southern Command commander, which at the time, well, still is, Admiral Halsey, who has announced that he's going to resign at the end of the year. So what's the chain of command? What were the orders? But then we want to get into broader questions, because it's about more than just this one strike. This is an ongoing operation of highly questionable legality. Even the first strike on a boat carrying cocaine, not even immediately destined for the U.S., what is the immediate threat that is being countered? So whole lot of questions about this specific strike and about the broader operation going on.
Well, let's talk about the broader operation, because I don't know if you had a chance to listen to any of the president and the cabinet meeting, but at that, Secretary Hegseth said that they are reestablishing deterrence and credibility, and then he said, perhaps as proof of that, it's so successful now, quote, it's hard to find boats to strike, and the people around the table laughed at that. What's your reaction?
Well, two reactions. First of all, the real issue is it hard to find cocaine in the United States of America? Supposedly, that was the mission. And I don't believe that it is. I don't believe we've made any sort of significant impact on the drug problem in the U.S., which was supposed to be the purpose of this. And then you've got that wrapped around the president's comments that make this sound like it has a lot more to do with regime change in Venezuela. So what is the mission? But then the other part of this that should be disturbing to all Americans is the cavalier cowboy attitude that Secretary Hegseth has to this. Even if he's right, even if this is a legally justifiable mission in the national security interests of the United States of America, you are killing people who you don't even know, as a matter of fact. And I remember, what was it, yesterday when Secretary Hegseth posted this joke cartoon referencing a book by Franklin the Turtle in a children's book, like this whole thing was just one big joke. This isn't a joke. Secretary Hegseth has an important job, whether he knows it or not, and I wish he would take it more seriously and understand the gravity of the decisions that he is making and the impact that that has on the security of our troops and on the national security interests of our country.
We're involved now in a conversation about what orders members of the military should and should not obey, and the Defense Department's Law of War manual uses shooting shipwrecked survivors as an example of an order service members can refuse, and it calls it, quote, clearly illegal. But I want to play for you what the White House press secretary had to say defending the action when asked if this constitutes a war crime. Take a listen.
What law is it that allows no survivors? The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
Was this self-defense, and how do the rules of international waters play into whether this was a war crime?
Yeah, in my opinion, no. This is not self-defense, and no matter where you do the strike, if it's not self-defense, then it's illegal. And look, I have a lot of sympathy for the general idea that when we send our service members out into combat, they got some very difficult decisions to make. When you look at what was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you're stopping someone, do they have a gun? Do they have a suicide vest? Are they a threat? When you're in the middle of an insurgency with roadside bombs and car bombs and all of that, even in the aftermath of the Afghanistan pullout, when we had that suicide bomber kill 13 service members and hundreds of people in Kabul, and we did that strike against a car that we thought was a threat that turned out not to be a threat, I have some sympathy for that. But people on a boat in the middle of the Caribbean carrying cocaine are not a direct threat to the lives of our service members or Americans. And they're certainly not a direct threat once that boat has been blown out of the water and 2 survivors are clinging to it. So it's important to draw that distinction. Understand, service members have a tough job. But here it seems very, very clear, literally, as you quoted, a textbook example of when lethal force should not be used.
There are now less than 10 days until the holiday break, and your colleague, Congressman Bill Keating, told our Ali Vitale it doesn't look like hearings or even a classified briefing for all committee members can get on the books before the end of the year. How optimistic are you that you'll be able to, that Congress will be able to get the answers you're looking for?
I'm worried about it for a number of reasons. I will say we are having, as I said, it's a small group, just 4 of us are going to get a brief with Admiral Bradley on Thursday. We're trying to push for a full committee hearing next week, also from Admiral Bradley, so we're not giving up on having at least a classified hearing before then. But, you know, the White House doesn't think that the law applies to them, as we've talked about, so they're not going to be cooperative. We're going to have to push. And then second, to make that push successful, we need cooperation from Republicans, the majority in the House and the Senate. Now, Chairman Wicker, Chairman Rogers cooperated on the demand for greater transparency, but we're going to have to push. So we're going to need Republicans in Congress to step up and demand the administration follow the law and give us the information they're supposed to give us. The law says any order to execute an operation like this is supposed to be given to Congress. The X order, as they call it, was done at the end of July. The administration still hasn't given it to us yet, the X order for the attacks in the Caribbean and in the Pacific. So our work is cut out for us, but the public has to put pressure on the White House. We need transparency on this. We don't have a cooperative White House, but we're going to have to work hard to try to force that transparency.
There is one more quote I want to read from what happened inside that room, which is, and this is again, Secretary Hegseth. We've only just begun in striking narco boats. We are stopping drugs. Do you feel this sense of urgency? It's clear that they have no intention of backing down, at least from what we heard today.
Yeah. I feel an incredible sense of urgency across the Trump administration. Look, I keep saying this, but I'll say it again. This administration literally thinks that the law doesn't apply to them. You know, we had, Secretary Noem this weekend saying, yeah, the judge gave me an order not to ship people to El Salvador. We did it anyway. We have the use of the U.S. military in city after city. We have the use of the Justice Department to persecute Trump's political enemies. Yeah, we've got a lawless administration. And literally, and look, we've had these arguments before, and every executive branch has an argument about what they have to do, what they don't have to do. We've never had an administration that so blatantly said, I don't care what the law is. This is what we're doing. Try and stop us. So, yeah, I'm deeply concerned about that attitude coming out of the White House. And you're right. The urgency is there. The urgency seems to be stopping an invasion of Venezuela and an attempt at regime change, if you listen to some of the other things that the president has said. So it's a very dangerous situation that requires immediate and intense attention to try and protect the interests of our country.
Congressman Adam Smith, with a very important meeting with the Admiral coming up. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I want to bring in Ben Rhodes, former Deputy National Security Advisor and MSNOW political and national security analyst.